President Cyril Ramaphosa is saying that the ANC could face its toughest challenge yet when South Africa goes to the polls next year. He was speaking ahead of an ANC two-day lekgotla, which will be followed by a government cabinet meeting. The issues under discussion are SOEs and, of course, the energy crisis. Let's discuss what leadership is required if the ANC has any chance of taking the country away from the brink. Now, the Deputy President David Mabuza has reportedly offered to resign or has resigned, which makes a cabinet reshuffle even more likely. To discuss, we're joined by Adjunct Professor Themba Maseko, who's the Director of Education, Executive Education at the Wits School of Governance. Great to have you with us in studio, Prof. Thanks for coming. But before we look at the implications of the reported resignation of David Mabuza, can you tell me how he became such a shadow in politics? And we can say that he wasn't even elected to the National Executive Committee. How did that happen?
I must start by saying I must be careful what I say, because I've known Mr. Mabuza for quite a long time. We're in the student movement together. Actually,
okay.
I was
Thanks for declaring that.
I was his Secretary General in the student organization. But yes, it's an interesting moment. I think that is making a call which I think makes the president's job much easier, because he doesn't have to fire too many ministers and a deputy president. So I think I wish we could see quite a few other ministers also handing over the towel and saying, Mr. President, we've served, get some new blood into your cabinet.
Yeah, because Paul Mashatile is there, right? So you'd have that two centers of power, which is often not liked anyway. But very quickly then, okay, so you don't want to go too much into this, but David Mabuza, do you still see a political future for him?
Well, the stories are saying he wants to go back to the branch and actually start from scratch. But I think that he may just be a spent force as far as the ANC is concerned, because, I mean, he seems not to have retained popularity within his province. We saw them not inviting him to their provincial conferences last year. He was not nominated by his province into the executive committee of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. So chances are that, in fact, he may actually become part of the history of the ANC. I don't see him coming back to play a major role in politics. If I was him, I would actually say, I've played my role and it's time for me to move on and do something else. And remember, many of the ANC members or leaders need to understand that playing a role in changing society, you don't need to be elected into a position. You don't need to be a minister or a deputy president. There are many other roles that people can play in society. It's not just about leadership. So I think that if I were him, I'll actually hang my boots and move on.
All right, so Paul Mashatile coming in, are there any logistics there? Reportedly, Panyaza Lesufi from Gauteng is trying to get someone to voluntarily resign, to get him in Parliament. Could it be about positioning?
Well, the issue of appointing members of cabinet, remember the Constitution allows the president to actually appoint 2 members of his cabinet who are not necessarily members of parliament. So it's not necessarily a requirement that somebody has to be, if these 2 posts that the president can make are actually still vacant. I can't recall that.
But it opens up the option.
It opens up the option, but so maybe Panyaza seems to think that the only way they could get Mashatile into cabinet is through him being an MP. He doesn't have to, but I think that in terms of their processes, maybe that's their preference, that he needs to be a member of parliament before he is appointed deputy president. So that's possible.
Well, Paul Mashatile was not the choice of Ramaphosa's camp. His political clout, his ambition is well reported on. I don't have personal experience of that, but do you think that the president should feel threatened with Paul Mashatile as number 2?
I don't think so. I think that the president, I just hope and pray that he's actually not just looking at filling vacancies, he's actually looking at establishing a new team altogether. And those teams, the appointment of teams should not necessarily be based on which faction anybody belongs to. You must say, this is the crisis that the country is going through now, because we've got plenty crises in many aspects of our public life. So he must say, I'm looking for people with the following skills, and then go to his leadership core and say, I'm going to appoint these people, whether they belong to his faction or not. Obviously, it makes his life easier if all the people who are elected, he appoints into cabinet, belong to his faction. But I think that he needs to look beyond factions. He needs to look for skills, for discipline, for hard workers, people who are energetic and people who are younger to actually enable him to actually do his job.
Well, this brings to mind Gwede Mantashe, who is a political ally of the president, but some don't want him in charge of Eskom, and the lobbying seems to be around that. Should he be in charge of SOEs or not? How do you think the president should position him?
I think that if the president is convinced that Mantashe is the right person, he must make that choice. Remember, appointing cabinet members is his personal decision as president of the country. Obviously,
but do it for the right reasons.
Do it for the right reasons, yes. But obviously, maybe the president may feel indebted to Gwede Mantashe because he played a key role in getting him elected into the ANC or re-elected into the position of president. So he may feel indebted to him. But as a president of the republic now, he needs to be convinced that Mantashe has the energy, the wherewithal, the capacity to perform the role that he wants him to perform in his cabinet. If, again, he believes that Mantashe can't play that role, either because he lacks the skill, the hard work, or the knowledge to perform his duties, he's got every right in the world to actually exclude him. But I don't see him excluding Mantashe because of the role he played in the campaigning period.
Very quickly, one of the compelling arguments for me is that you need somebody in charge of this whole transition and this whole crisis who's just practical. Renewables may be part of the future. Maybe we still need some coal now. Just work with what we've got, perhaps nuclear. But it's becoming very ideological. And the just transition, renewable energy, used now as a political tool. Is that a pity, given where we are as a country?
I think it's a pity because, you know, we're in a crisis. I mean, let's accept that it's a crisis. And it's not time to play ideological games. The economy is crumbling, citizens are unhappy, so many things are going wrong in society. And when Mantashe assumes the role, if he's appointed, again, Minister of Energy, he's got to prioritize the energy challenge and make sure that he makes decisions and make them quickly, because we don't have time to waste. We've taken so long. I mean, load shedding started in 2007. It's embarrassing that even today we still aren't able to solve the problem of load shedding. So if Mantashe
and
is
even talking about
reappointed,
the options, we don't even know which path we want to follow. He's got to have to move. We've got to make sure, though, that he makes the right decisions in the best interests of the country. That should be the requirement. And the best interest of the country is to make sure that, in fact, there is a strong board appointed at Eskom. It's given the space to work, and they take key decisions. If they need diesel, they'll let them be provided with diesel. Renewables are unavoidable. They need to happen. And then make sure that the maintenance of power station happens immediately as a matter of urgency. It's embarrassing that the largest economy in the continent can't even manage to provide power to its economy and to its citizens. So I think that the task is quite urgent. And I just hope that, in fact, we're not going to be playing political games and ideological games and looking for personal interests in deals and all of that. Professor,
we need to fix.
We appreciate your time.